guys, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to make lemon scones. So, I've got everything all set out and we'll get started. Okay, so we've got all of our ingredients. I have 2 1/3 cups of flour. I've got a 1/3 cup of sugar, a 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, our 1/2 cup or 8 ounces of butter. We've got our milk, a little bit of lemon juice. Do I use leftover liquor bottles for storing things? Yes. Yes, I do. Besides, it looks really nice when you bring it out for parties and whatnot. And our lemon. Okay. So I've actually cut the flour. And what that means is I have 1 2/3 cup white flour and then 2/3 cup of whole wheat flour. It helps give the recipe a little bit more like substance. And if you want to be more nutritionally conscious, you can cut your flour with like almond flour, which adds protein to it, which not a bad thing. Okay, so we've got our flour and our sugar, our baking powder, salt. Okay, and I've got this in my bowl with my strainer / sifter. It helps aerate the flour and give it a nice mix together. I use kosher salt and it doesn't always go through, but that's fine. Okay, so we'll give this a nice stir. There we go. This nice and mixed together. And we'll add our butter. So we've got our 1 stick of butter, or 1/2 cup. Does it have? It has 113 grams. I'm not actually sure what any of the other measurements are in metric, but I'll find that out and I'll just stick it in little parentheses on the recipe. Okay, there we go. There is our butter. Get that nice and coated, and we're just going to smush it in. It'll look a little bit like coarse oatmeal, listen to me. It will look a little bit like coarse cornmeal. And I will show you guys what that looks like. Now you're just trying to get the major bumps out. The smaller ones will get smaller when you need it. Okay. There we go. Got most of them. I'm going to show this to you guys. Bits of chunks, but nothing really bigger than, say, an M&M or a Skittle. Okay. So, for plain scones, you just go ahead and start with the milk and then move on to your kneading. But we're going to add our lemon zest. So I've got a nifty zester. There we go. Now this takes a little bit, so I might fast forward through this part for you guys. Okay, come on. There we go. Okay. get as much of the zest as possible. It's where all of the flavor and oil is. There we go. Not bad. Now I'm using a Meyer lemon that I picked up from the grocery store. I also use these particular lemons when I make limoncello. And we can completely do a video on that. Okay. Get that. Okay, almost done. A little bit there. There we go. And we've got our little naked lemon. Okay, and I'm just going to use the fork to scrape the zest off the bottom. Okay. Give this a quick stir, kind of incorporate it. Try to break up those pieces so you don't get a huge chunk. There we go. Much better. Nice and spread throughout. Okay. To kind of kick up the lemon flavor a little bit, we're going to add a little bit of lemon juice. Now, I got this little, I think it's like a half shot almost. Fairly certain it's actually a communion glass. I got it at a secondhand store. But it's perfect for adding little bits of things. So we've got our, excuse me, fresh squeezed Meyer lemon juice from the last time I made limoncello, actually. And fill this. There we go. So probably tablespoon and a half. Mix that in. Now we want to get this nice and mixed in before we add the milk, because, nifty little fact, if you add lemon juice to milk and wait 5 minutes, you have buttermilk. So we don't want it to start curdling just yet. Okay. There we go. Okay. So we've got our whole milk and our half-cup measuring cup. Pour this in. Now we're going to start with this, and hopefully it's enough. Sometimes you do need more milk though. A lot of that actually has to do with the weather. If it's humid and there's more moisture in your flour, then you don't need as much liquid. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Yay. So this is what we're going to turn out onto our cutting board. So move this, the lid on the milk. Okay, so I'm going to flour the cutting board. And I just grab out of my lovely little discanter a little bit of flour. Sprinkle it all over my cutting board and then my hands so that the dough doesn't stick. Okay, turn this out. mixing. Okay. So we've got our dough. Now, press this together really quick so I can show you guys what it looks like. Here we go. Grab a little bit more flour for your hands. Now we're gonna knead it for 2 minutes. Roughly 5 to 6 kneads. And if you need more flour, that is perfectly fine. There we go. Because you don't really want it sticking to you or the cutting board. There we go. Okay. Now, once you're ready to actually make your scones, I'm going to put it into roughly a ball. And then we're going to pat it down into a circle or square, depending on how many scones you want to make. I'm going to make a rough square-ish type. So you can get roughly 8 out of a square, depending on how thick you want them. Okay. So I've got my lovely square of dough. Take a butter knife. And we're going to cut our scones out. Now, I do have the oven preheating at 350 degrees. And I've got my stone pan already greased. It's just a little olive oil. And you can use cooking spray or coconut oil or a plain nonstick pan. Okay, so we're gonna cut our triangles, but we're gonna cut it into squares first. There's that. So we're going to cut our larger square into 4 smaller squares, and then I cut each of those on the diagonal so that you end up with roughly a square or triangle this size, and then we just put them into the pan. Now this is a really great recipe for doubling, so that you can make twice as many scones. You would just, instead of making it into one big ball, you would end up making it into 2 before you flatten it. There's that. This one. Now I like to leave at least an inch in between them, so that there's plenty of room for rising. Okay. There's that. And this one. Let's rearrange these just a little. That there. And this one over here. There we go. Okay. The great thing about these being fairly solid dough is if you need to rearrange them, you can. So here are our wonderful 8 scones. Now I'm going to put them into the oven, which I had preheated for 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. So I will see you guys in about 20 minutes. There we go. Oh, let's set my lovely little egg timer. 20 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes, and I'm going to take the scones out of the oven. Now, at this point, you can just have them plain, or you can put a little bit of icing, which is just powdered sugar and maybe a little lemon juice. And we're done. I'll have the recipe below. Comment, like, suggestions for the next video, and I will see you guys next time.